Hey, are you ready? Are you sure? All right, let's go. So let me start with a question. When was the last time you had a conversation with someone and they were really focused on you and listening to you without jumping in to fix you, argue a point, or to win? If it's hard to remember, you're not alone. So most of us are taught how to speak, but not how to listen. We're taught how to debate. We're not taught how to have a real dialogue. We learn how to defend our side, but not how to stay curious about someone else's perspective. So, whether it's politics, family dynamics, or social media comment threads, anything like that, or just a group chat with your friends, we're often more concerned with being right than being in relationship. We are often engaging without actually understanding perspective. It costs us connection, it costs us empathy, it costs us a chance to grow. Um, and this podcast itself is born out of the desire to change that. So if you are like me, you kind of scroll through social media, online platforms where they're hosting, podcasts surrounding a lot of people now call difficult conversations. It's not that the conversations are difficult more than it is how we receive one another's perspectives. That is what make things difficult. The topics are not difficult. They're just things that either you choose to talk about or not talk about. And those come with emotions and feelings and reasons why you do or don't want to talk about it. But the actual topic of conversations and the engagement does not have to be challenging when you approach it to have minimal impact of trying to prove your rightness. There are a lot of people in the world, podcasters, social media, whomever, even in the media and government, who are saying things as if they were true, but they're just their perspective or opinions. And they cannot handle the opinion of someone else that is not in alignment with their own. It becomes a battle, it becomes war, it becomes, how dare you tell me that I'm wrong? And you may not even say that they're wrong. You just may say, I don't believe it. I think something different. Well, you're terrible because you do. Engaging in dialogue through your own unique lens is what makes engagement and communication so vital. It makes it a great experience if you're open to learn. And the thing is that coming in contact with people who have their own perspectives about things doesn't mean that you're going to learn something new. You just may learn something new about them based on what they believe and how they see the world. I find that we have often gotten caught up in our viewpoint that we forget that we're only standing in one spot, and how we see the world from where we're standing is really only unique to us. But if you shift 3 feet to the other direction, you get a whole different view. It may be similar, but they see something that you may not have. If you're actually up on a hill and looking at the same view, they see something drastically different. If you see someone who's in the valley and they're looking up, it's not the same view, right? So My desire for this podcast is, what if we approach conversations with curiosity instead of certainty? What if we pause long enough to say, tell me more, instead of just waiting for our chance to talk? Um, that's the vision of Cruising Not Apply. Initially, it was for adult topics, kind of sex ed talk, but it evolved into, what if we talked about things that were really affecting us other than, the adult stuff? But um, not to flatten differences. We have these conversations not to flatten differences and not to avoid hard truths. We have these conversations to create space where we can hold the tension and complexity without tearing each other down. And I believe that healthy communication isn't about agreeing on everything. We're now in a society that is changing drastically by the day, where agreeing with everything equals loyalty, and that's stupid. I mean, it's I can see why people are feeling that way now, because there is a pressure on people to align with our governmental administration, because that's important to them, loyalty, aligning with them and not arguing, not saying, pointing out perspectives that doesn't make sense for the American populace. But they take that as a threat. And that's how feel when I'm watching podcasts. And you got people going back and forth, and I'm sitting there watching people wait to respond and not listen. So there are a lot of people who, um, the phenomenon of relationship podcasts came out, and everybody was like, a men or women, so married, single, and they had all these different perspectives, but everybody was aligning themselves with one side, with either side. So their arguments or their debating came out as, I'm going to prove you wrong because I'm right. And there may not be any concrete scientific or research based facts on their feelings, but they come out to people like, this is what I this is what I think is common sense. You should agree with me, but I don't agree with you. So I'm right. I try to stay in relationship when I'm talking to people and remember my relationship with them, and not by overpowering, but by connecting. So I have had engagement with people who are very strong willed, very intentional about showing people how right they are, or showing people that their words should be taken as gospel. You should, because of how they present it. Do you know you can present bullshit with confidence and people will buy it? I, there's an audience for everything, right? But when we start talking about communicating cross, I say cross teams, or cross, in the professional world, they'll talk about, cross departments, cross team training and things like that, where you have someone who's working in this specific part of the department or organization, and they're detached from you for what you do in this other one, but the connector is that they're doing it for the mission of the entire organization. So there are times where they have to come together and either cross train or kind of let each other know what's happening and how it relates to them. And even if it doesn't relate to them, the other side can say, okay, their department is doing that. We understand what they're doing, even if we're not directly connected to it at this time. So I've seen a lot of people, have these really strong opinions about relationship, and they're changing their experience into the general rule. You know what I'm saying? So when I hear podcasts where there are a bunch of men going in on what women do wrong, what they don't do, and what they this do, and then I see the women coming back saying, but y'all do this and y'all, rarely do I hear them say, Tell me more about why you feel that way. I don't mean yell at me and try to prove me wrong. Just I'm hitting my mic, I'm sorry. But tell me more about your perspective on this because I'm not living your lived experience. So tell me a little bit more and then I can share you with you mine. And in those perspectives, at some point, maybe we'll find common ground, or maybe we'll walk away from this knowing that we don't agree, but I understand more of who you are based on what you shared with me. That actually means you have to walk away holding a level of respect for someone's opinion. You may not respect the opinion, but you respect the fact that they have a right to theirs, same as you have a right to yours. So, there are, for this podcast itself, sometimes I'll be one on one, just solo dolo. Other times I'll bring in guests. So I do want to have this conversation when I have more guests on. But for now, these are just my thoughts. Again, my lens, my perspective, and I would love to hear in the comment section from some of you who've had experiences where you went into a conversation and you just want to share perspective and understand, and it turned into this battle of who's right and who's wrong. Have you yourself gone into a conversation with this, gone into it full throttle with I'm going to prove my point versus share my perspective? And what happens when you do share your perspective? What happens when you, and this is a real question, you can answer it in the comment section. What happens when you step into a space and someone gives you the space to just share without them poking in while you're trying to share, to dismantle? You may not even be trying to make a point, but you're just sharing, and they want to dismantle what you're saying while you're saying it. When was the last time you actually sat with someone who listened and said, "Oh, okay," and maybe ask curious questions? That's a dialogue. That's how we have conversations. I listen to you and then I ask you a question. The question is so that I can get more insight on what led you to this perspective of yours. Those are the conversations that I have. And I'm not good at having conversations with people who don't want to have conversations. So I hear a lot of people saying, well, I'm a conversationalist. I have conversations. I like to have deep thoughts and deep talks. And I'm saying, all right, ready, set, go. Then I start asking questions and then they stall and they shift to something else that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And I guess to make it lighter. Now, mind you, I'm a clown. So I can be goofy and laugh all day with the best of them. But if I'm trying to get to know you, if I want to know how you tick, I'm going to ask you questions. Here's the thing. This is irrelevant. This is not, I won't say irrelevant, but this is not talking about getting to know someone romantically, although it does apply in a way. This is just getting information from someone who you want to engage in and kind of see where they are on certain things. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to find out where he stands on this issue. A lot of times, if you just ask questions, general questions about them, and whatever they ask, whatever they answer, you take that information and you kind of become curious about that. You keep asking those questions. A lot of times, what you want to know, you'll find out just through conversation. And I tell people a lot of times, especially if I am, I tell people a lot of times, especially if someone is getting to know me, whether it's, you know, romantically or platonically or just, meeting someone for the first time. I often tell people that I am a conversationalist. I do ask questions, I do listen. And um, if there's anything that I feel uncomfortable, answering, you don't have to just avoid everything. You can just say, I think, I'm not ready to answer that question right now. Maybe another time. Or, that's something that I just keep personal. I don't really share that particular part of myself, in the beginning. And the other person should not get offended by that. They should be like, oh, okay, no problem. What we need to stop doing, and this is not a show about telling you what to do. These are suggestions. Suggestions. But in my opinion, or at least what I need to stop doing or have stopped doing, is spilling everything about what I think, what I know, what I feel, who I am, spilling all of that into one conversation. And you can have another podcast that talks about how giving out too much information in the beginning is setting you up to be manipulated because they know who you are. You just giving them the blueprint. All they got to do is follow the plan. No. What I do is, especially in my coaching, and I don't know, did I mention I was an executive coach? I'm a coach. So in my coaching, what I do is start with asking my clients, what would you like to talk about today? What do you like to talk about that's going to help you get to some understanding either about yourself or about a challenge you're having or an objective to where you want to go as we create that strategy as we go. When we're having conversations about anything, it could be politics, it could be exhausting. People are losing family members. And I mean, like, I never want to talk to you again over politics. Please be careful to not throw away a lifetime of relationship because of a viewpoint. Have the conversation. Now, granted, if your family member is just an asshole, you can walk away from it. Absolutely. So, but what I would recommend is that even in conversations where you're just meeting with a friend and you're just like, hey girl, what's going on? And you just start the conversations. Um, I would ask. This doesn't feel like a lot of people would do this, but I would ask, what's going on with you? You want to talk about anything? As a coach, that's kind of how I start my sessions, but the anticipation is there from the client that I'm going to ask them, what would you like to focus on during our time today? But if you're just with friends or family, whomever, you can use the same technique of going into the conversation saying, you good? Got anything you want to talk about? And it's not fishing. It's just like, you good for today? Okay. All right. Okay, cool. And then you can say, well, you know what? I had something on my mind. I got to get your opinion on this. Or I just want to see, what you're thinking about. And it doesn't have to be deep. A lot of people think, you know, getting into conversations that way is going to lead to some deep revelation about the, you know, measures of the universe. Or no, it could be anything. But opening up the space for a genuine conversation, and once you start to feel, if you start to feel that the conversation is getting more directional from people who you're talking to, and maybe just one-on-one conversation or group. And what I mean by directional is you're all having a conversation, sharing your perspective, and then someone or group or people in a group decide that what they say is something that you should be doing. Like, I don't think we need to be doing this, and I don't think you should do this. You should do this. Thank you, but thank you for the perspective. But this is what I think about moving forward with this. The problem I'm seeing a lot is that people are not people are not stepping up to advocate for themselves and their own choices as much as they say they are. Because we would rather just be quiet and let people talk. You know that saying when people say, oh, that's just how they are. Well, this is just how you are. Thank you for your feedback. But, you know, and when people give you feedback or telling you what they think you should do, you can hit them with some questions. Well, what would make you, what would make you think I should go in that direction? Why? It feels very important to you that, I do it this way. Why? Why? Or you can ask someone, give me a scenario where if I do it your way, it's going to be much better because I'm just trying to see your vision for this situation. And I'm not seeing it. Doesn't have to be that, people interpret stuff like that as "Ugh, you got a problem with me." And it's like, calm down. I'm asking questions. Once you start asking questions, you will be amazed at how many people can handle questions, innocent questions. So you can end the conversation, be like, all right, I don't want to talk to you no more. And then I talk to them for like a couple of months and then come back and somebody's going to say, hey, stranger, where you been? You know where I've been. I've been right here. You were an asshole the last time because you wouldn't listen and you would not just hear me for me and you wanted to give me instruction instead of compassion and a space to actually talk. So please don't come at me with that where you been stranger stuff. You know where I've been. You know where I've been. They know where you've been. But anyway, I think that there are a lot of things that we say. And as a coach, I'm often, first of all, as a coach, we're trained how to listen. We're trained the different levels. Did you know there are different levels of listening? And we don't think about it because we're in the throes of our daily regular communications. And if you are in a habit of someone telling you their story and you jump in and you have to find, I think we think we're helping when we try to tell them our experience with that thing. Like, I know exactly what you're talking about, girl. I remember you do realize when you do that, you're hijacking the conversation, right? You just, mm, you just hijacked it. Because a lot of times when you hijack the conversation, you never actually get back to the point that the other person was talking about because conversations have a habit of spiraling into the next topic and you don't get a chance to back up and go back. And I'm mindful when I do that to people. And then if I even hear myself, say, I will quickly say, but that's irrelevant. Tell me what you were, tell me how that affected you. It puts it back on them. And with some of my clients, I have stopped, listen, I asked a question and I listen to them. And in coaching, there is no rush for them to answer, and there is no rush for me to pull anything out of them. And what I find is in the pause, many of my clients find that breath, that pause, that space that is provided to really take a moment to assess how they want to respond. In that moment, they're also thinking of what's impacting their response. And I've had a lot of clients say, one thing as a coach we love hearing is, that's a great question. And then I love this. That's a great question. Oh, no, I got to think about that. As a coach, I'm like, okay, cool. Take your time. We got the same hour. You can use as much of this time to think about that. And what's happening is they're viewing it from their perspective. Then they're considering how others may be viewing it or what led them to that or what's the undercurrent between what they feel and what they believe. And in that time during the conversations that I'm having with my client, I'm allowing them to open up to different points of view for themselves. So when I'm in a conversation with other people, or I'm in a group and you could be in a group setting where you are having these dialogues, there is nothing wrong with stepping back to give someone space to think. problem comes up when you're in that space with impatient people who are trying to prove rightness. And they don't want you to take time because they want to be able to hit you with the 1 and 2 and prove. They want the knockout. They want to see you fall and then saying, yeah, I told you I was right. Um, a friend, a true friend, someone who values communicating with you and being in relationship with you will give you that space. And if they are like pressuring you to answer their question now or get to the point, there are a lot of people who are like that. And you may be watching me now saying that just takes too much time. Consider this. Imagine you yourself are having a moment and someone rushing you. You would fight for your right to just be able to think about it. So why wouldn't you give someone else that grace? Okay, right, good. Okay. Some people, before they even meet up with you, are like, wait till we talk. Wait till I get there. Man, I'm gonna wait till I'm gonna show her. I looked this up today on Google for 13 minutes. So I know talking to understand and build relationship, even if your perspectives are different, there's nothing wrong with that. If there is love and genuine connection between you and those who you are engaging with, then there is the possibility that your initial social standards and personal standards and ethical, moral standards are going to help drive what you believe, what you think, and your perspective. If that's the case, and there's just unreconcilable clashes between perspectives, there are some people who acknowledge, I know you don't agree with me, and that's okay. But then there are also people who are like, I know you don't agree with me, and that will not stand. I cannot be around people who are not going to agree with me. We have to align. And let me tell you something. You hear a lot of people who are spiritual say being unevenly yoked. They take that out of context a lot. Not agreeing with one another with one another is not necessarily being unequally yoked. If you're talking about being unequally yoked, you're most likely talking about the basis, the core of who you are. If they are not aligned with what they believe, if you worship God, they worship the devil. That's kind of not aligned. Or they don't believe in anything and you have a strong faith. They believe in education and you're like, it don't matter. We can, okay, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that I even that I went to the accent. If they say, yo, it doesn't matter if I go to school or not, I can survive doing whatever I'm doing. And you may be like, I have a degree because I want to learn so much more. And, but there is a undercurrent there also that education and not education does not mean that you're exclusively intelligent or unintelligent. There are a lot of intelligent people who never went to school. They just are intelligent people. There are a lot of educated idiots too. Yes. So, what I would like to say, in other words, instead of approaching these conversations ready to battle it out, approach these conversations asking yourself, do I value our connection? Do I value our relationship? Do I value having this person in my life where I can agree with, I can disagree with, I can share my perspective, and I can also gain new insight on why I feel and think the way I think through how they feel and think the way that they do. There is nothing wrong with being swayed by learning something new. You don't want to be brainwashed, but I allow myself to hear what other people ask questions and say, maybe I should give what I'm thinking about this topic a little more time. Let me research a little more. Maybe I didn't see a research resource about this thing that, they did. Let me give me some information to grow. I'm always going to be a a cup, I'd rather have the cup half full, because people can't pour new knowledge into me if full, right? So, honey bunnies, please like and subscribe to this page and let me know some things in the audience, in the comment section about tough conversations or challenging conversations you've had with people where either you didn't feel like you were heard, or you felt like they were instructing you, and what happens if you don't take their instruction? How does that work out? Your stories of how you like to build relationship through conversation or some fails. Hit me with some of those successes and fails. Some people started their entire marriage of however many years through a conversation where it could have been a hit or miss, but if it was a hit, it felt organic, kept it moving. If it felt like a miss, maybe they had to back up and then circle the block and come back and be like, okay, now I hear you. All right. So thank you all for being with me, as I conclude this podcast. I'm going to say be safe out there, have real conversations that are going to help you grow, learn, and move in love and compassion. Stand up for your rights, make your voice heard. You don't have to agree to still be in relationship with people, but if you do sever relationship with people, understand that it doesn't have to be forever. Okay? So this is Coach Truess, and I am going to go do more research and have more conversations and build more relationships. Okay? All right, loves. Thank you so much for being with me today. Come back next week. I have a new topic. I'm hoping to have the professional people pleaser conversation next week. It's so It'll be great. If not, I'll have something really interesting and new. Already have a list of topics, but whatever comes up next, I hope you'll be here with me for that. So thank you. Have a wonderful, wonderful week and continue to believe that change is possible for all of us in a great, great way. Don't let the society as it stands right now make you feel hopeless. Okay? Because I know that feeling and I would hate that there's so many people out here feeling like things are all is lost. So all is not lost as long as you have breath and as long as you can communicate and fight for your rights. So with that being said, peace out and I'll see you next week. Bye.